Today's curious object comes from our collection here at Paynton Zoo. So it's got a nice downward curve down here. It's very, very delicate, very, very light, and it's got quite a lot of pock marks all over it. It looks a little bit like a crumpet with all its tiny little marks through it. So today's curious object is a flamingo skull. So our flamingo skull here, I'm going to point out some of the features that you can see on it to start with, because it's a bit tricky when you look at a skull to work out where the different eyes and nose and things like that would originally have been. So you can see the holes just here. That's going to be where the nostrils of the flamingo would have been. These large holes here, this is going to be where the eyes would have been. And do flamingos have ears is a question that we get occasionally, and the answer is yes, they do. It's going to be further down the back here, but you can't see the ears on a bird because they're covered by special feathers, so they're hidden amongst all of those feathers on the head. And then the big feature that we've got on a flamingo is obviously the beak. So the beak is very, very large, points downwards, and unusually for a bird, the bottom beak is the bigger bit, and the top beak here, if I lift that up slightly, is the smaller bit. So bird bones actually have air pockets inside them, so you can clearly see that on this flamingo skull because there's lots of little holes all over it. Now the reason they've got that is because birds need to be very, very light. To be able to fly, you've got to have light bones, you've got to have a light body. So the skull of a bird is about 1% of their total body weight. So what does a flamingo skull tell us about a flamingo? Well, the big thing it tells us is the way that it feeds. So flamingos are what are called filter feeders. So if I pick it up like this, when they're standing upright, it looks a bit odd that their beak points downwards, but it's for a very, very good reason. So if you stand and watch our flamingos here at Paynton Zoo, you will see that they turn their heads upside down almost and put them in the water when they're feeding. Flamingos are filter feeders, so when their head's upside down in the water like this, they'll be moving their head through the water and they'll be opening and closing their beak very, very quickly. And that movement sucks water into their beak and then pushes the water back out again. Now to help filter it, they've got something special within their beak. Now you can't really see it on this skull because they are very, very fine, but they would have all across the beak here and all across the top something like bristles, and they're called lamellae. And as they're opening and closing their beak using their filter feeding, those lamellae squeeze together, and as the water's pushed out, it traps all of the food into it. And they're so small and so fine that they can trap things that are as small as 4 millimeters. So we're talking really, really tiny little animals that they can be trapping within that beak. To help them with their filter feeding, flamingos have incredibly large tongues. So within their mouth, they've got a huge tongue, which is also covered in bristles as well, which is all going to help with that filter feeding. Now, if you watch our flamingos again when they're filter feeding, and you watch the back of their neck, this bit here would be covered in skin, and you might be able to see their tongue moving very, very quickly in this bit of their head just here. So take a close look next time you visit the zoo. One final curiosity for our flamingo skull. So our flamingo skull here is white, and if you look at our flamingos here at the zoo, you'll see that their beak is in fact black. And that's because birds' beaks are covered in a keratin sheath. So keratin is the same thing that makes our fingernails. So when this animal died, that keratin sheath will have been lost, and you end up with the white skull that we're left with here. So I hope you enjoyed this curiosity from the zoo. Make sure you share, like and subscribe to our videos, and come and visit our animals here at Paynton Zoo soon.